Most of you aren't subscribed. Make sure to subscribe, as it helps out the channel. Without further ado, following our MC at night, he heads towards a nearby shop, noticing a swarm of people running out of the shop. Accidentally tripping over two girls and dropping his phone, our MC notices a man wielding a knife, hearing the man threatening to harm the girls. Holding himself from running away, our MC chooses to dash towards the attacker, tackling him to the ground, allowing the girls to run away. But suddenly our MC begins to faint, realizing that the attacker had accidentally stabbed him, running away and leaving our MC bleeding out on the floor. With the two girls running over to our MC's side, our MC is grateful to have protected the girls, finally falling unconscious. Suddenly waking up in a fancy-looking room, our MC notices a maid cleaning in his room, prompting the maid and our MC's mother to call our MC Kane. With Kane's mother asking if he remembers anything, Kane looks into a nearby mirror, realizing that he is in a new body. Looking at his tiny hands, Kane hears his mother and the maid talking about how Kane was asleep for a whole week, checking to see if Kane still has a fever. Realizing that her son may be hungry, Kane's mother calls the maid, Sylvia, to whip up a meal. As his mother and Sylvia leave for the time being, Kane has some time to digest what is happening, deducing that he must have passed away that night and reincarnated in this child's body, but at least he saved the two girls. Swiftly checking out the room he's in, Kane suddenly hears Sylvia coming back with some soup, but when Sylvia enters the room she realizes that Kane had accidentally wet himself. Cleaning up Kane, Sylvia feeds Kane the soup, noting how the soup comprises meat and vegetables, but the overall taste is a bit plain. Happy to see that Kane is now full, Sylvia hoists Kane onto her shoulder, patting Kane on the back in order to get him to burp. Sitting down at the table with his family, Kane states that he's figured out some details regarding his new life. Kane's full name is Kane von Silford and is 3 years old. Kane has a father named Garm, a mother named Sarah, and a sister called Rain who is 2 years older than him. Additionally, his mother Sarah is the second wife to his father, with the first wife being Maria, with 2 sons Jin and Alec, meaning that Kane is the third son out of the entire family. Kane's father Garm is a high-ranking noble, having his own army and is the protector of land south of Gracia in the kingdom of Esfort along with the protector of the forest of monsters. Curious about this world, Kane had asked Sylvia about monsters, learning that there are adventurers who slay monsters, who wield weapons and magic. Ecstatic that this world has magic, Kane is told by Sylvia that he must first learn who to read and write this world's language first, making Kane even more excited, as in his previous life, his last relative had passed and he was left all alone. His father learns of Kane's interest in reading and writing, asking how Kane has had a change of mind ever since his fever. Realizing that he can't reveal that he's not actually this family's son, Kane begins to throw a fit, unable to control his new baby body. But after being fed some milk, Kane calms down, asking if he can have access to his father's books on magic and the kingdom's history. Seeing as her little brother is interested in magic, Kane's sister Rain informs Kane that people are commonly baptized before they can even use magic. Alone in his room, Kane is able to conjure up a fireball in his palm, dancing as he's achieved an amazing feat for his age. Hearing Sylvia and Reen coming, Kane hides his magic capabilities, chatting with Reen who offers to teach Kane all she knows. Day after day, Kane would be taught by his sister, learning about the 300-year history of their kingdom of Esfort. Apparently, the first ever king started as an adventurer, slowly building his empire, but when Kane hears that the king's name was Yuya, he realizes that the king was probably Japanese and reincarnated as well. Continuing to listen, Kane hears that there are elves, dwarves and beast folk in this world, excited for when he can finally explore the outside world. Skipping 2 years ahead, Kane is finally 5 years old, dressed up for his baptism. Seeing as it's his big day, Kane's entire family is here with him for this momentous day, all traveling to the location by carriage. As Kane admires the townsfolk, he asks Rain what it's like after the baptism, prompting Rain to open a status window, showing off her skills. Spotting a title, Adorer of Kane, Kane gets embarrassed, changing topics and noting how Rain has 3 elemental affinities. Additionally, Kane learns that Rain was granted level 2 protection magic, where there are 5 levels for any skill and 5 is the highest mastery. Kane's mother states that protection magic is essential for casting spells and also dictates how powerful a spell is. Arriving at the town's church, Kane is amazed to hear that the church worships 7 pillars of gods, kneeling before the head priest who begins the baptism. As the head priest calls out the 7 gods to grant Kane his status, a sudden burst of light encases everyone, transporting Kane before the 7 gods. Introducing himself as Zenom, the god of creation and creator of the world, Zenom starts their round-table meeting, asking Rhyme, the god of death and rebirths, to start. Rhyme acknowledges that Kane's death was quite tragic, having given his life for the 2 girls. But funnily enough, Rhyme reveals that if Kane hadn't intervened and stopped the attacker with a knife, the attacker would have actually tripped, allowing for passers-by to stop them. Sad that his death was not needed, Kane is happy to hear that due to his death, the attacker has been charged with murder, and the god of Earth had acknowledged Kane's brave act, giving him a second chance in this new world. With Rhyme apologizing for starting Kane off in a child's body, Kane asks that Rhyme not be sorry, as he's thankful to be given a life where he has a loving family, a complete contrast to his previous lonely life. Happy to see such a pleasant child, Reno, the god of magic, and Zenom grants Kane their protection, excited to see Kane's future progress. With the remaining gods, Sarnos, the god of war, Grim, the god of technology, Panam, the god of commerce, Bella, god of earth, all granting Kane their protection, they all reiterate that they expect great things from Kane, sending him back to the church. Having never heard of such a huge light appearing during baptism, Kane's father asks to see Kane's status window, but knowing that something is off, Kane makes up the excuse of needing to use the bathroom. Running off to privately check his stats, Kane is shocked to see all of his skills at level 10, crazy as the maximum level for any skill is meant to be 5. Needing a way to hide his outrageous stats, Kane remembers Zenom bestowing him the skill of creation magic, creating a spell to conceal his stats. Heading back home to celebrate, the entire family toast to Kane finally being baptized, asking once again for Kane's stats. Having used his concealment magic, Kane happily shows off his stats, but when his family looks through his skills, they are all shocked to see that Kane has the 7 gods' protection, noting how Kane has 35 times the mana capacity of a highly skilled mage. Realizing that he hadn't properly concealed his status, Kane's father states that everyone in the room is to keep Kane's stats a secret, as Kane himself could be considered a threat to the kingdom. Returning to his room, Kane notes how he should have concealed his stats even more, but for now he wonders if he can try out some summoning magic. Wanting to summon an adorable fluffy pet, Kane accidentally calls forth a monster. Kane notices the monster approaching his sister and friend Parma. Not wanting his loved ones to be hurt, Kane ignites his fist, aiming to strike down the monster, but instead is forced to take a ferocious punch. Before he faints, Kane is able to call back the monster, falling to the ground, as Rein and Parma run to his side crying. Luckily, with the gods' protection, Kane wakes up with no injuries, relieving his sister and Parma, noting how in the world he has power to protect people. That night, Kane's father has gathered everyone to hear Kane's decision on life, prompting Kane to proudly announce that he wants to be an adventurer. Happy to hear that Kane is pursuing adventuring, Kane's father states that he'll personally hire some tutors to help Kane get ready for the outside world. Waiting in his room, Kane wonders how strong his tutors will be, hearing that his tutors have arrived. Running to the window to catch a glance, Kane uses a teleportation spell, accidentally teleporting into the air, accidentally falling onto his 2 tutors. Having been cushioned by Breast, Kane apologizes, learning his tutors' names are Maestra Millie and Maestra Nina. Officially introducing themselves, Millie shyly introduces herself as a D-rank adventurer, whilst Nina calmly greets Kane and his family. Scolding Nina for being so nonchalant around nobles, Millie accidentally shows off Nina's elf ears, only to be interrupted by Kane, who asks the girls to be casual with him. Kane's father has hired Millie and Nina to tutor Kane for 3 years, getting Kane excited to see how strong he can become. Heading out to the training field, Millie asks to see Kane's swordplay, nonchalantly swinging and wielding a wooden sword. With both girls impressed, Millie asks to spar with Kane, shocked that Kane is able to keep up with her, even though Kane is only 5 years old. Asking if Kane has a protection, Kane reveals that he has the god of war's protection, explaining his genius with the sword. Completely tired out, Millie states that Kane will now learn magic from Nina, handing Kane off to Nina. Revealing that she has a level 3 protection for the god of magic, Nina states that she'll be teaching Kane the basics of elemental magic, but Kane shows off his mastery of basic spells, creating water, fire and rock spells, impressing the girls. Nina notes how Kane is capable of chantless magic, a technique that even elite sages can't even master, and on top of that Kane wields all elemental affinities. Seeing that Kane's spells have destroyed the training area's walls, the girls suddenly spot Kane wielding an item box, able to store and retrieve items. Knowing that Kane truly is a genius, Millie and Nina note how they need to move elsewhere as Kane may destroy the whole place. Just then Kane suggests that they train outside, revealing that he has never left his home before and that he can let loose and truly show his powers. Knowing that isn't a bad idea, the girls chat with Kane's parents, stating that they've gauged that Kane's powers surpass a beginner student, therefore they ask for permission to leave the castle, in order to teach Kane intermediate sword skills and magic. Knowing that this day would come, Kane's mother and father agree to let Kane train outside, but state that he must return home before sunset. With the castle gates opening, Kane rushes outside, admiring the vast greenery, only to head towards a nearby boulder. Given permission by Nina to cast an intermediate spell, Kane conjures a firewall, instantly blowing apart the nearby boulder and blowing the girls back. With such an intense spell, the girls note how Kane should be exhausted as intermediate spells cost a lot of mana, but it seems that Kane has quite a huge mana pool as well. Just then, Nina and Millie sense a creature approaching, spotting a killer rabbit appear from the nearby forest. Readying their weapons to slay the rabbit, the girls helplessly watch as the rabbit speeds past them, rushing Kane, who easily evades. Shooting air bullets, Kane nonchalantly slay his first monster, receiving congratulations from Millie and Nina. Wanting to show off his first kill to his family, Kane uses his item box to store the corpse, learning that Millie plans on buying a magic bag item that is supposedly able to function just like the item box, but it's a little pricey. Fired up, Millie asks Nina to search for more monsters to slay, prompting Nina to cast a search spell, spotting several creatures nearby. Amazed by Nina's spell, Kane learns that the search spell involves spreading a thin layer of magic into the surrounding, allowing for the users to sense other users with magic. Focusing, Kane copies Nina's spell, spotting the same creatures nearby, impressing Nina, who notes that Kane learnt the spell on his first try. With the three slaying the various creatures nearby, Kane fails to slay the last one, chasing it towards the nearby forest, but is suddenly called by Millie to never enter the forest. Apparently hundreds of strong monsters reside in that forest, and every few decades, all the monsters gather and wage an attack on the kingdom, hence the reason for the huge wars around the kingdom. Knowing that he must become strong enough to protect his home from these monsters, Kane heads home to check his stats, amazed that he's now level 8, only after one day of training. Checking his skills, Kane realizes that the gods have given him a skill that multiplies his XP gain by 100, scared that he'll have to hide this skill or else he'll be deemed a monster by others. The next morning, Millie and Nina reason that Kane should face stronger monsters, heading to the town's guild to gain information on tougher monsters. Introducing herself as Rudy, the guild receptionist, Rudy gets flustered to learn that Kane is a noble, stating that wolves are a step above killer rabbits. Just then, an adventurer interrupts the girls, insulting them for babysitting a kid all day. When Millie and Nina ask the adventurer to leave, the adventurer reminds the girls that he is Cross, a C-rank adventurer, grabbing a hold of Nina, prompting his men to restrain Millie. Before Cross can do anything indecent, Kane interrupts, asking Cross and his men to let go of the girls, but when Cross refuses, Kane strikes Cross in the arm. Retaliating, Cross attempts to punch Kane, but Kane easily dances around him, prompting Cross to grab his blade. Getting serious, Kane begins dodging all of Cross's slashes, catching the blade only to disarm and toss Cross out of the guild doors. Seeing Cross's men about to harm Millie, Kane knocks out and tosses the men out as well, gaining praise from Nina and Millie, who notes that Kane is quite impressive with his martial arts. Heading out, Kane begins to train his magic, taking breaks with the girls every so often. With 3 years passing, Kane learns that Millie and Nina's tutor roles are coming to an end, reasoning that he should get them a parting gift for all they've done. At night, Kane teleports outside of the castle, heading into the monster forest in search of items to craft magic bags for the girls. Slaying a blood ogre for Millie and an earth dragon for Nina, unknowingly drawing the attention of the kingdom's knights and his father, who set out to the forest, wanting to know the cause of the loud noises in the forest. When Kane's father and his men arrive at the forest, they realize that there are no monsters nearby, instead a single napkin of the perpetrator is left behind. The next evening, whilst Kane is slaying wolves, Millie and Nina note how it's quite sad, as their final day with Kane has arrived. Chatting with the girls, Kane unveils the red and green magic bags he's crafted for them as a parting gift, shocking the girls as the blood ogre and the green dragon Kane slayed normally need a whole rank party to defeat. Kane states that each magic bag should be able to store an entire mansion, prompting the girls to reveal that items are considered national treasures. Additionally, Kane had made it so that only they can hold the items, making them theft-proof, bringing the girls to their knees. Knowing that they'll never be able to repay Kane, Kane states that the time he's spent with them is easily more valuable, prompting Millie and Nina to lean in for a kiss on each cheek. Before Nina and Millie leave, they state that they'll come help with Kane whenever he wants in the future, signaling the end of their tutoring contract with Kane. That night, Kane's father confronts Kane, scolding Kane for causing such a ruckus and drawing so much attention in the monster forest, knowing that the napkin left behind belongs to Kane. Kane's father reiterates that Kane keeps his powers a secret, as it's what's best for him and the family. Deep in a cave, Kane faces a red dragon, puncturing it in the head, surprised that he was able to kill such a creature. Storing his sword in his item box, Kane checks his stats, completely stunned at the fact that he has over 80 million mana points and has the titles, Enemy to All Monsters and Dragon Killer. Now 10 years old, Kane with his family travels to the royal capital to make his debut, something required by all nobles. Thinking about the thought of living in the capital, Rain suggests that Kane and her both live together and attend the same school, but their father reminds Rain that students must be at least 12 years old before they can take the entrance exam. Knowing that Rain is 12 years old, Kane asks how excited Rain is, hearing that Rain promises to place first in her entire cohort, to show her little brother how amazing she is. Asking his father how long it'll take by horse-drawn carriage till the capital, Kane learns that it'll take about a week without interference, prompting Kane to cast a search spell in the nearby vicinity for monsters. Suddenly Kane notices tens of monsters swarming people far ahead, asking his father to send his men to help out. Knowing that backup won't arrive in time, Kane states that he'll go ahead of them, hopping out of the carriage and instantly propelling himself with some wind magic, in the direction of the monsters. Cutting to the battlefield, we see several knights protecting a carriage, ordering the princess in the carriage to hide. Before the monsters can devour the knights, Kane arrives, speeding past the monsters and firing air bullets to kill the monsters. Knowing that he may accidentally harm the knights with his magic, Kane pulls out a sword from his item box, infusing his blade with flames only to slay all the monsters. With the battle over, Kane goes to check on the knights, but they refuse to allow Kane to approach the carriage. Apologizing for the late introduction, Kane officially introduces himself as the son of Margrave Garm von Silford, placing the knights at ease, who begin to fall to the ground due to their injuries. Just then, Kane's father's knights arrive wondering how Kane arrived before them, but Kane has no time to explain, casting an area healing spell and explaining that the men should get some rest and refuel as they need to compensate for their blood loss. Sadly, Kane explains that he can't revive the fallen knights, storing their corpses in his item box, just before his family arrives. Leaping out of the carriage, Kane's father states that he has come to help, realizing that Kane had already cleaned up and handled the monsters. Noticing the crest of the Santan family on the carriage, Kane's father wants to know if the Duke of the Santana is safe. As the carriage door opens, Kane and his father drop to their knees, greeting the Princess Telestia and Miss Silk, happy to see that they are both unharmed. Seeing that Princess Teles is exhausted, Kane asks for permission to help aid the princess's exhaustion, casting a relaxation spell, calming both girls' nerves. Immediately introducing herself personally to Kane, Princess Telestia thanks Kane for all the help, but Silk von Santana butts in, admiring how Kane made use of magic and swordsmanship to slay the monster. With Telestia and Silk fighting over Kane's attention, they both hear that Kane is traveling to the royal capital, prompting the two to reveal that they both are heading to the capital as well, dragging Kane into their carriage and heading off before Kane's father can react. In the carriage, Kane is forced to sit in between Miss Silk and Princess Telestia, both still wanting Kane's attention. Seeing as Kane is so nervous, both girls tell Kane to drop the formalities and just call them Teles and Silk. Learning from one of the knights that they'll be arriving at the town of Renoma soon, Silk and Teles cling tighter to Kane, who's forced to accept the girls' advances. Stopping at their destination, Kane states that he'll meet up with the girls tomorrow, but the girls ask that Kane stay with them all night. Kane's father appears, stating that Kane sharing a room with a girl at his age isn't appropriate, but the girls reiterate that they don't trust anyone but Kane to protect them, forcing Kane to agree to sharing a room. With both girls wanting Kane to themselves, they agree to have Kane take the middle bed, both choosing to move their beds right next to Kane's bed. When Kane asks for the reason for this, the girls use the excuse of possible monster attacks during the night, hence why they must be as close as possible in case. Continuously spending time with Silk and Teles, Kane is forced to repeat various nights sharing a room together with the girls in different towns, up until they finally arrive at the kingdom. As the trio arrive at the royal kingdom, they are greeted by a high-ranking knight, asking to know who the girls are clinging to. Upon hearing that it's Kane, the knight introduces himself as the vice-captain of the Royal Chivalric Order, Dame von Gazard. Thanking Kane for protecting the girls, Dame asks for the corpses of the knights that he had stored, placing them in the courtyard. Before Kane leaves, Kane holds back tears, asking for these men to be honored, prompting Dame to promise that these men will not be forgotten. Before Kane can leave, Dame stops Kane, telling Kane that the king has summoned him. Entering the palace throne room, Kane walks past hundreds of nobles only to kneel before the king, Silk, Teles and the king's attendant. The king's attendant announces that they've identified the monsters as orcs, numbering 50 orcs with the orc general among their ranks, deducing that it must have been a planned attack. On top of that, the king's attendant states that Kane single-handedly took down all 50 orcs along with healing all the knights that endured the orcs' attack. Silencing the nobles from gossiping, the king announces that Kane will be bestowed the title of Baron, granting him 10 platinum coins and a mansion. Seeing as Kane is just a child, a noble by the name of Corgino refuses to accept Kane being granted such marvelous gifts, but the king explains that he sees a future in Kane and that good people like Kane should be rewarded and elevated. With Corgino backing down, Kane accepts the king's offer, but is asked to privately meet with him. Sitting down with his father, Kane's father states that Kane is the first to be promoted out of all his siblings. As the king arrives, he reassures Kane and his father that they can be comfortable with him, thanking Kane for saving his daughter Teles's life. On top of that, Silk's father, Eric von Santana Malbeek, also thanks Kane for saving his daughter Silk's life, prompting Kane to brush off his good deeds as a normal human reaction. Speaking up, the king states that he is aware of Kane's exceptional swordsmanship and magic prowess, hence the reason for him giving Kane enough money and a mansion to live freely and focus on his skills. Just then the king and Eric both ask Kane to marry their daughters, stating that Kane must take responsibility for sharing a bed with them. Flashing back a couple minutes ago, we see the king, Eric and his attendant brainstorming ways of getting a powerful boy like Kane to stay by their sides, asking if Silk and Teles are willing to marry Kane. With pressure from the king, Eric and the two girls, Kane accepts the proposal, but learns that he'll be engaged first, and when he turns of age will then marry them. Privately chatting with his family, Kane apologizes for getting involved with the royal family. Check out one of our other videos on the screen or in the info card above. Subscribe, like and comment.